Imagine if the voice inside your head could become your ultimate weapon, a force so powerful it rewires your brain, shifts your chemistry, and transforms you into someone unstoppable. In just 72 hours, you can hack your neural circuits, unlock unshakable clarity, and step into a version of yourself that thrives under pressure. This isn't a pep talk. This is neuroscience, raw and real, backed by cutting-edge research and battle-tested by elite performers. Your self-talk isn't just words. It's a biological command that shapes your reality, sculpts your identity, and dictates who you become. Ready to make your mind go viral? Here's the blueprint to change everything. Your inner voice is either your greatest ally or your fiercest enemy. Every single word you tell yourself triggers a cascade of neurochemicals that can either propel you forward or drag you into a spiral. Whisper, "I'm failing," to yourself, and your brain unleashes a flood of cortisol. Your heart pounds, your muscles tense, and your focus crumbles. But say you've got this, you're built for this, and dopamine surges through your circuits, your breath steadies, and your mind sharpens like a blade. Studies from top-tier neuroscience labs, like those at the University of Michigan and Stanford, prove this beyond doubt. Second-person self-talk. "You can do this" acts like a mentor, not a critic. It activates your prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center for clarity, decision-making, and emotional control, while dialing down the amygdala, your brain's panic button. This isn't about chasing warm fuzzies. It's about commanding your biology to perform at its peak. For the next 3 days, you're not just thinking, you're running a high-stakes experiment on your own brain. This is self-directed neuroplasticity, the science of deliberately rewiring your neural pathways through intentional action. Step 1, talk to yourself like you're the coach you've always needed. Scrap first-person whining like "I'm so stressed" or "I can't handle this." Instead, say you've faced tougher challenges, you're ready for this. This subtle shift creates a psychological buffer, a mental space where you're no longer the victim of your thoughts, but the guide steering them. Research in cognitive neuroscience shows that second-person language reduces activity in brain regions tied to self-critical rumination, like the default mode network, while boosting circuits linked to task-focused motivation. It's why elite athletes, Navy SEALs, and Fortune 500 CEOs use this technique under pressure. It's not fake confidence, it's a neurobiological hack that makes you comply with your own instructions. Why does this work? Because your brain doesn't just hear you, it listens. When you say "you've got this," your medial prefrontal cortex and temporal parietal junction light up, regions responsible for perspective taking and distinguishing self from others. It's like you're stepping outside yourself, becoming your own trusted advisor. This reduces internal resistance and increases compliance, meaning you're more likely to follow through. Biochemically, it's a game changer. Second-person self-talk lowers cortisol, the stress hormone that clouds your thinking, and elevates dopamine, the neuromodulator that fuels motivation and reward. You're not just talking, you're shifting your brain's chemistry toward confidence and action. Over time, this becomes a mental reflex, a trained response that kicks in when the stakes are high. Now let's talk about step 2, starting your day with identity, not goals. Most people wake up and set fragile, fleeting goals. "I'll hit the gym today. I'll eat clean. I'll stop procrastinating." These are well-meaning but weak because they depend on motivation, which is about as reliable as a sunny day in a storm. Goals keep your brain stuck in a future-focused loop, spiking anxiety and cognitive friction. There's a better way, and it's rooted in neuroscience. Instead of goals, anchor your mornings with identity statements. Don't say "I'll go to the gym." Say you're the kind of person who shows up for your health. Don't say "I'll be productive." Say you're someone who tackles hard things with focus. This isn't fluffy self-help. It's a neural strategy that rewires your brain's self-referential networks. Here's why identity is so powerful. Your brain treats who you are as sacred, non-negotiable. When you tie your actions to identity, you activate midline cortical structures like the medial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex, regions tied to autobiographical memory and meaning. These areas give your words emotional weight and stickiness, making your behavior align with your self-concept. Studies in behavioral psychology and neuroimaging confirm this. Identity-based statements create stronger, more stable neural pathways than goal-based intentions. When you say you're someone who keeps promises to yourself, your brain doesn't just hear a plan, it starts sculpting a version of you that lives up to that truth. This is self-referential processing at work, and it's why identity sticks where goals slip. Think of it like this: goals are about what you want to do, but identity is about who you are. When you act from identity, you're not fighting to become something, you're expressing what you already believe yourself to be. This removes internal resistance, the mental tug-of-war that sabotages most people. Neuroplasticity thrives on this alignment. The more you repeat identity statements, you're the kind of person who stays calm under pressure, or you're someone who finishes what you start, the more your brain myelinate those pathways, making them faster, stronger, and more automatic. Your nervous system fights to maintain behaviors tied to identity because it sees them as core to your survival. That's not philosophy, that's biology. Now, step 3, you've got to catch the negative spiral before it hijacks you. We all have that inner critic, the voice that creeps in with "you're not good enough. You always screw this up," or "this is going to fail." Left unchecked, these thoughts aren't just noise, they're neural commands that your brain obeys. Negative self-talk engages your default mode network, a circuit that includes the medial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex, which goes into overdrive when you ruminate or judge yourself. This triggers a limbic system response, spiking activity in the amygdala, your brain's fear center, and flooding your system with stress hormones. Your heart races, your breath shallows, and your ability to think clearly plummets. Sound familiar? That's your brain reacting to your own words, as if they're a threat. Here's how you stop it. Label the thought. When that inner critic pipes up, hit pause and say, "That's a thought, not a fact." This isn't some feel-good mantra. It's a neuroscience-backed technique called cognitive diffusion. By labeling a thought as just a mental event, you shift neural activity from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, the brain's logic and regulation hub. fMRI studies show this reduces limbic reactivity and increases activation in the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, giving you more calm, more control, and less stress. In seconds, you're redirecting blood flow and neural energy away from panic and toward executive function. Your cortisol drops, your breath slows, and your mind clears. You're not arguing with the thought or suppressing it, you're disarming it. This labeling trick is deceptively simple but profoundly effective. Think of it as a pattern interrupt, a way to break the loop of negative self-talk before it spirals. Most people fuse with their thoughts, treating them as gospel truth. "I'm not good enough" feels like a fact, so your brain and body react as if it's real. But when you say "that's a thought, not a fact," you create just enough distance to see the thought for what it is. A fleeting mental event, not a verdict on your worth. Over time, this practice becomes neuroprotective, conditioning your brain to stop treating every negative thought like a crisis. You're not ignoring reality, you're mastering how your nervous system responds to perceived threats. Why focus on 3 days? Because 72 hours is a neurobiological tipping point. Your brain is constantly evaluating which circuits to strengthen or prune based on frequency, intensity, and relevance. When you commit to 3 days of intentional, emotionally charged self-talk, you trigger what neuroscientists call a plasticity cascade. Within hours, immediate early genes like CFOs activate, signaling that your neurons are learning something new. By day 2, if you keep the practice consistent, your brain starts producing brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein that acts like fertilizer for new neural pathways. By day 3, you're transitioning from short-term plasticity, temporary signal changes, to the early stages of structural plasticity, where actual changes in neural wiring begin. This isn't permanent yet, that takes weeks of repetition. But it's real, and you'll feel it: less mental friction, more clarity, and a growing ability to redirect negative thought loops in real time. This 3-day window is critical, because it's also when most people quit. Your brain is still tethered to old circuitry, and change feels uncomfortable, like breaking in new shoes. That discomfort isn't failure, it's proof your brain is rewiring. Push through, and you're sending a clear signal to your nervous system: this new way of thinking matters, make it the default. You're not just changing your mindset, you're laying the foundation for a new neural architecture. Let's dive deeper into why precision matters more than positivity. Most people think self-talk just needs to be upbeat. "I'm awesome," "everything's fine." But vague affirmations often backfire. Your brain is a prediction machine, wired to detect incongruence. If you say "I'm amazing" but don't believe it, your brain flags the mismatch, creating cognitive dissonance, that feels like internal friction. The result? You feel worse, not better. Precision, on the other hand, is like a laser. Instead of "I'm great," say "You've prepared for this. You know the steps." Instead of "I'll do better," say "You're the kind of person who stays focused during chaos." This evidence-based language recruits your prefrontal cortex for planning and reasoning, while aligning with your brain's need for specificity. Why does precision work? Because it creates neural efficiency. Precise self-talk activates goal-relevant networks, reinforcing behaviors tied to your identity and process, not just outcomes. It's like coding your brain with clear instructions, instead of fuzzy platitude. Neuroimaging studies show that specific, context-driven language increases activity in the prefrontal cortex and reduces limbic system overreactivity, leading to better emotional coherence and decision-making. When you say "You've executed this under pressure before," your brain doesn't just hear motivation, it retrieves memories of past successes, strengthening the neural circuits that drive resilience and performance. Precision isn't about feeling good, it's about wiring your brain to act. Your self-talk also has a direct line to your body's autonomic nervous system, the control center for heart rate, breathing, digestion, and stress responses. Negative self-talk, "I can't handle this. This is going to fail," amps up your sympathetic nervous system, triggering fight or flight mode. Your heart races, your breath shallows, your muscles tense, and your cortisol spikes, making clear thinking nearly impossible. But shift to intentional grounding language. "You're safe, stay with it," and you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest branch. This boosts GABA, your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, which calms the amygdala and restores balance. Your heart rate stabilizes, your breathing deepens, and your frontal cortex comes back online. You're not just talking, you're regulating your physiology in real time. This autonomic control is why elite performers, from special forces operators to Olympic athletes, obsess over their inner dialogue. It's not about motivation, it's about state management. Your internal language is a lever for shifting from reactivity to responsiveness, from chaos to clarity. Pair it with physical cues, like a deep breath or squared shoulders, and you create a feedback loop that links cognition to physiology. Over time, this loop becomes automatic, a trained reflex that kicks in under stress. You're not just thinking differently, you're commanding your biology to align with your goals. Let's talk neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. This isn't a passive process, it's experience dependent, meaning what you repeatedly think, say, and do shapes your neural architecture. Every time you engage in intentional self-talk, you're firing and wiring neurons together, a principle called Hebbian plasticity. The more you repeat a thought or behavior, the more myelination occurs along those neural pathways, making them faster and more automatic. But here's the flip side. Neurons that aren't used get pruned. So when you stop indulging negative self-talk and replace it with precise, empowering language, you're actively weakening old circuits and building new ones. Your self-talk is one of the fastest, most consistent inputs your brain receives, making it a primary driver of neuroplastic change. Neuroplasticity is gated by two things: attention and emotion. When you speak to yourself with focus and feeling, even for a few seconds, the impact on your brain is amplified. That's why half-hearted affirmations don't work, they lack intensity. But when you say you're the kind of person who rises to this with conviction, your brain listens. It doesn't care if the statement feels true right now, it cares about what you repeat with emotional salience. Over 3 days, this focused repetition starts to shift your brain's default settings, making adaptive thoughts and behaviors more automatic. You're not just changing your mindset, you're training your biology to align with your best self. Let's break down the neurochemistry of self-talk. Every phrase you repeat is a chemical event. Encouraging, action-oriented language. "You've done this before, you're ready," triggers dopamine release, the neuromodulator of motivation and reward. Dopamine doesn't just feel good, it creates momentum, sharpening your focus and priming your brain to tackle challenges. It strengthens neural circuits tied to progress, making effort feel less like a grind. Negative self-talk, on the other hand, "I always mess this up," spikes adrenaline and norepinephrine, chemicals that heighten alertness, but can tip into anxiety if unchecked. This floods your system with stress chemistry, compromising decision-making and draining energy. Calming self-talk. You're in control, stay grounded. Boosts GABA, which acts like a brake on your brain's fear centers. This reduces amygdala overactivity, slows your heart rate, and clears mental fog. PET scans and fMRI studies confirm that self-compassionate language activates different neural pathways than self-critical talk, shifting your brain's chemical balance toward resilience and focus. Your internal dialogue isn't just a mindset, it's a neurochemical lever that shapes how you perceive and respond to the world. Use it strategically, and you can flip your state from stress to high performance on demand. Now let's address a common myth. Change takes forever. Not true. While deep-lasting rewiring requires weeks or months, the first signs of neuroplastic adaptation start within hours. 3 days of deliberate, emotionally charged self-talk can kickstart a plasticity cascade, where synaptic connections strengthen and new pathways form. Immediate early genes, like C-foals, activate within minutes of novel stimuli, like a new way of speaking to yourself. By day 2, BDNF production ramps up, supporting new neural growth. By day 3, you're laying down the early framework for structural plasticity, actual changes in your brain's wiring. This is why 3 days is a game changer. It's a neurological threshold that signals your brain to prioritize this new pattern. But here's the catch. The first 3 days are also the hardest. Your brain is still tethered to old habits, and change feels clunky, like learning to drive a stick shift. That discomfort is your brain transitioning out of outdated circuitry. Most people quit here, mistaking resistance for failure. Don't. Persistence in these 72 hours is what separates those who change from those who stay stuck. You're not just building a habit, you're architecting a new neural blueprint. Let's talk about self-talk as autonomic control. Your internal dialogue directly influences your autonomic nervous system, which regulates heart rate, breathing, blood pressure, and stress responses. Negative self-talk, everything's going wrong, cranks up sympathetic tone, sending you into fight or flight overdrive. Your body reacts as if you're under attack, heart pounding, breath shallow, muscles tight. But shift to grounding language. You're okay. Focus on the next step, and you engage parasympathetic tone, triggering rest and digest responses. Your heart rate slows, your breathing deepens, and your cognition sharpens. This isn't placebo, it's physiology, driven by language. This control is trainable. By consistently pairing self-talk with physical cues, like a slow exhale or relaxed posture, you create a feedback loop that links mind and body. Over time, this becomes a reflex, letting you shift states under pressure. Elite performers train this deliberately, because they know their biology responds more to internal signals than external circumstances. Your self-talk is a command center, giving you real-time access to your nervous system's full spectrum, cognitively, emotionally, and physically. Now let's zoom out. In a world bombarding you with noise, social media, news, expectations, your inner voice is your last line of defense. It's your neurological sovereignty, the one thing no one can take from you. For 3 days, commit to owning it. Talk to yourself like you're the hero of your own story. Say you're the kind of person who thrives in chaos. Label negative thoughts as noise, not truth. Anchor your words in who you are, not what you hope. This isn't about chasing fleeting motivation. It's about claiming control over your brain's wiring. Here's the deeper truth. Your brain doesn't care what you hope to become. It builds who you say you are. Every time you speak with clarity, courage, or focus, you're sculpting neural pathways that make those traits your default. Neuroplasticity doesn't judge. It responds to repetition and intensity. In 72 hours, you're not just shifting thoughts, you're upgrading your entire operating system. You'll feel the difference. Less reactivity, more resilience, more you. So what's it going to be? Will you let the world's noise define you, or will you become the signal your brain listens to? For 3 days, just 3, speak to yourself with precision, identity, and unrelenting self-leadership. Say you're built for this. Interrupt the critic with, "That's a thought, not a fact." Start each morning declaring who you are, not what you'll try to do. This is your chance to go viral, not online, but inside your own mind. The question isn't can you change? The question is can you become the kind of person who speaks truth into your own biology? before the world tells you what's possible. Your brain is listening. Your body is waiting. 3 days. Start now. Rewrite your wiring. Become unstoppable. So I propose a challenge, not a soft affirmation routine, not a feel-good slogan pasted on your mirror, but a biological intervention. A 3-day protocol where the sole focus is this: talk to yourself differently. Not with delusion, not with toxic positivity, but with targeted, deliberate, self-directed language designed to reset the balance of neurotransmitters, activate neuroplastic circuits, and reestablish control over your inner narrative. When you wake up tomorrow, before you reach for your phone, I want you to take 10 seconds, just 10, and say something to yourself out loud. Something true, not aspirational, something grounded. For example, I don't feel perfect today, but I'm capable of handling whatever comes. You might feel foolish. Your brain might resist, but speak it anyway. Vocalization matters. When you hear your own voice, it creates a closed-loop feedback system. Auditory cortex engages. Motor cortex activates. The basal ganglia, responsible for habit formation, begins to encode the experience as something real. This is not imagination. This is neural entrainment. By day 2, something begins to shift. It's subtle at first. You might notice your inner critic softening. You might find yourself pausing before calling yourself lazy or useless when you fall short of a task. That pause, that's neuroplastic friction. That's your brain saying, maybe we don't have to run this old program anymore. And in that pause lies potential. The potential to rewire. But rewiring isn't just about removal. It's about replacement. So instead of silence or vague positivity, you install a new loop. You say, I'm learning. This is part of the process. It sounds simple. Too simple. But the hippocampus, the seat of memory, loves repetition. It encodes familiarity. The more it hears these new phrases, especially when linked with emotion and vocalized with sincerity, the more it tags them as relevant. And the brain, ever efficient, starts to lean in. I've seen this work not just in lab settings, but in high performers. Athletes, special forces operatives, CEOs. They don't succeed because they eliminate negative self-talk. They succeed because they've trained themselves consciously to interrupt it, to speak a new language to their nervous system. And that language becomes the code their brain follows under pressure. Let me tell you a story. Several years ago, a close colleague of mine, a neuroscientist and endurance athlete, went through a period of deep burnout. Every day, despite his knowledge of the brain, he woke up with a loop of dread. I can't keep up. I'm falling behind. I'm not enough. This wasn't drama. This was his basal state. His cortisol levels were elevated even before breakfast. His sleep was fragmented. His motivation plummeted. So we tried an experiment. For 3 days, he agreed to run a self-talk protocol. It was simple, almost embarrassingly so. Morning, speak one sentence of grounded, neutral truth aloud. Midday, catch one moment of inner criticism, pause and replace it with curiosity. Evening, say one thing he appreciated about himself, even if it felt small. On day 1, he felt nothing. On day 2, he said it felt fake. On day 3, something cracked open. He was in a meeting where he normally would have left feeling inadequate. Instead, he noticed himself thinking, I did my part. That's enough today. And it wasn't forced. It emerged. 3 weeks later, his baseline cortisol was lower. His motivation returned. He began writing again. Not because of medication, not because of some breakthrough therapy, but because he spoke differently to himself. That's the power we're overlooking. Now let's dig into why this works at a cellular level. When you speak self-compassionately, even just neutrally, you activate pathways linked to oxytocin and dopamine. These are not just feel-good chemicals. They are neuromodulators that change the brain's receptivity to experience. They enhance learning. They reduce noise in the limbic system, the emotional brain, and allow the frontal cortex to engage more fluidly. In other words, when you speak to yourself like someone worth believing in, your brain believes it, and it begins to perform accordingly. But it's not just about being nice to yourself. This protocol isn't a kindness practice. It's a recalibration tool. You're telling your nervous system, we are not in danger, we are in growth. And that message downregulates stress hormones, increases neuroplasticity, and improves task-related focus. It primes your visual system to look for solutions rather than threats. It teaches your heart rate variability to stabilize. And over time, it creates what we call a neuropsychological anchor, a new home base for how you relate to effort, to failure, and to yourself. There's a reason the Navy SEALs use specific internal dialogue training. Why astronauts rehearse not just actions, but inner speech under duress. Because when stress peaks, your brain doesn't default to logic. It defaults to what you've practiced. And if all you've practiced is self-criticism, that's the voice that takes the wheel when things go sideways. So what happens by the end of 3 days? The brain doesn't fully rewire, of course. But the groundwork is laid. Synaptic pruning begins. Old circuits lose strength from lack of use. New circuits, especially those linked to positive reinforcement, behavioral flexibility, and self-trust, begin to myelinate. That means faster conduction, more ease, less internal friction. Let me be clear, this isn't magic. It doesn't erase trauma. It doesn't guarantee success. But it gives you a lever, a tool, and most importantly, agency. The knowledge that your voice is not just commentary, it's causative. It's shaping who you become. I'll leave you with this in the brain. Timing matters. The state you're in when you say something to yourself determines how deeply it's encoded. So during this 3-day challenge, I recommend 3 windows. Right after waking, when your brain is transitioning from theta to beta waves, prime time for subconscious imprinting. Right before sleep, when memory consolidation is ramping up. And during moments of emotional charge, when stress, excitement, or fear peaks. Those are the doorways. Talk to yourself during those times like you would to someone you believe in. Not perfectly, but persistently. I've got this. Even if I fall, I'll learn. I can figure this out. I am not broken. I'm becoming. Repeat, often, with breath, with belief, even if it starts out faint. Because the science is clear. The brain doesn't know the difference between a repeated thought and a deep truth. It learns what you tell it to learn. It changes based on what you practice. And the story you tell yourself, quietly, daily, is the blueprint for the person you become next. So talk to yourself like it matters. Because it does. It always has.